Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to review Star Trek Insurrection, which is the third Star Trek The Next Generation film. And yeah, this one is it implements a lot more CGI, which helps with the action set pieces and helps to sort of like thrill you more, which I enjoy. Um, I'm not sure what the larger consensus is on this film, like if this is a fan favorite or not. Um, it's not as lofty and as like rich as other stories have been. Certainly not the previous one with the Borg or like earlier original series. Kirk films. Um, but this one I really enjoy. I really enjoy my time with it. I can see, you know, yeah, I can see myself getting more out of this film going back to it and enjoying it equally as much as I did on my first viewing. Now we kick off with Data seemingly gone rogue. Now that's like a fascinating concept because I guess like that's always been in the back of my head, like they could do that storyline, and like they have touched on that in the series, with his brother and stuff. But there's always a story there, isn't there, with like robots and androids going rogue. There's always some way that you can implement that into a story, even if it's a good guy. There was short lived though. In terms of like going somewhere with that story. I guess it wasn't the writers' wider, scope of where they wanted to take that. That was something that just it was introductory of getting us into who the real villains were and what the greater grand scheme was for the plot. Which is okay because where it went, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the villains. Even though they weren't a large part of it, they dropped in and out of 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 like I think it was a 1 hour 40 minutes running time. So they were a presence throughout, but they just wasn't. I mean, it was a bit like a in the TV series how the villains would like plot, but they wouldn't be like in the heroes' faces throughout the runtime. So there wasn't like battles continuously. It was more just Picard and the crew trying to work out what their scheme was, and then how to undo what they're trying to do, and yeah, a great story really. Like so, you have this planet, you have this race of beings that are on the at the start we're it's suggested that they are less technologically advanced as many other parts of the galaxy and the universe and Starfleet. Um, they've just figured out how to, I think it's do the warp drive or something or the other. And there's that like the beginnings of like arrogant. Maybe it's not really touched upon, but like the arrogance by people who are technologically advanced, and then like these people. I think the main spokeswoman, who's one of the main characters, is called Arjun. I think her name is, and you can sort of see her. They're a proud people, regardless of where they are in their evolution. But then that blows out of the water again. So there's certain things that like I touched upon where I thought we're gonna go some places, but then the wider plot becomes apparent. So like that isn't even important anymore because they're actually a race of people that are like hundreds of years old, but they migrated to this planet. And it just so happens that like I think like the rings around this planet or something or the other, they grant healing properties or regenerative properties that can like sort of like essentially de-age you the longer you stay there, even for a short period of time, which the crew quickly find apparent that you stay very youthful once you mature of age, that is. So yeah, that was cool. And obviously, there's that woman that I spoke about is like a love interest for Picard, and like Patrick Stewart is such a terrific actor. Anything he does is like he means it, and he really brings levity to his performances. And like you just believe it every time he falls in love with another woman. He isn't like promiscuous like Riker or Kirk was. But when he falls in love, or when he finds a love interest, or when he wants to date, or you just believe it because he's like, he's not. I guess he's more gentle than the other fellas, or approaches it in a more romantic way. So yeah, that was all. So yeah, I really enjoyed like the CGI. Like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily hold up a lot like to today's standards of CGI. Although today's standards are questionable also. But no, I think I I don't look at it and like grimace. I can. I really enjoyed that. I even enjoyed the stuff from the previous film. Not as much as this one in terms of CGI, but yeah. So the CGI, obviously, came out even later than the rest of them. So like the advancements of CGI got better, and I thought he implemented it well. And that's with Jonathan Frakes directing, who plays Riker. He obviously does a lot of directing. He's already directed the second and third film, I think it is, and he directed, I think, perhaps many episodes of the television series. He clearly enjoys it. Yeah, and some of his shots of when they're on the planet, I think he really captures, like, he wants to capture the scope of the planet and like the beauty and the nature, and I think he does that really well. Yes, so yeah, I'm just going to touch on a few things that I saw in the film. They might be a bit all over the shop. In terms of like, now I'm on the Jonathan Frakes directing. There was a moment where like there was a they ran into like Picard and the crew like protecting the inhabitants of this planet because, again, okay, the story is that, like, the evil villains want to harness the power of this regenerative abilities, along with like naughty Starfleet officers that are also going against the Prime Directive, which is like really big in the terms of Star Trek. Like, that is the one rule in this Star Trek universe. You don't go against the Prime Directive. You don't enforce your own. You don't overstep your mark on planets. You let evolution take place naturally as it would, instead of you directing things or taking things away from that those people. So yeah, there's this Starfleet officer that is like in cahoots with the this enemy, this really ugly motherfucker. He's The makeup design is really good. For the main villain. Really liked it. So yeah, they want to just basically take everyone off planet and then harness those abilities for themselves, for their own selfish gain. And it's funny how, it's not just people that are like revengeful, like the guy with the makeup. He's not just like, it's not just those people that are like vengeful, that like once were part of this community and then um went away for, because the grass apparently is greener on the other side. Then they find out it's not just those people with vengeance in their heart. It's also these Starfleet officers that are like very able-bodied. They live prosperous lives in Starfleet, and yet they also want to cling on to as much youth as they possibly can. And they use a really genius way of like using like holodeck programs to sort of like ferry this species onto like the holodeck. But obviously they make it look like their surroundings, their natural surroundings, and then obviously they can transport them off planet, and do it like in a humanitarian way instead of killing them all. But obviously it does descend into them being very awful people, and just like forcibly removing people to get what they want. So yeah, that brings me to the cave sequence I wanted to talk about. So like, Picard, the woman, and a couple of the crew members and the inhabitants of the village, they take refuge in this cave, and then there's a cave collapse. Presumably because of the barrage of attacks from the enemy. Then Picard and the woman get trapped underneath these caves, underneath these rocks, and then like there's a nice moment between the two, and then immediately after that there's another attack, and then Picard, as Picard always does, you'll notice this, he always puts himself in harm's way. He'll always transport himself into the clutches of the enemy, and he always seems to be able to get himself out. Maybe that's why he does it. He knows he's the most capable person of getting himself out of those situations. But yeah, he goes along with the woman that's like forcibly transported onto the ship of the enemy, and so yeah, it's like the cave sequence lasted only like 5 minutes, and it didn't really seem thematically necessary. But then on the other hand, there is a later scene towards the end where where Picard has a plan. The old, you know, the plan to like outsmart the enemy, and he's now like he gets one of the bad guys that is now like a deflector who sees the error in his ways. And then so he gets into contact with Data, and I want to say Data and Geordie, or Data and Worf. Yes, Data and Worf. And but instead of like the film showing us that like what the plan is, the editing is really good because it just goes straight into the plan. We're not aware as the audience of what the plan is, but like we see Data swooping in, being like a distraction, and then Picard doing his thing. So that was really cool thematically. So then you know there's swings and roundabouts with the editing, the directing, and yes. The final battle. Really like the final battle. Picard has never been more intent on stopping evil. I He is more ruthless and intent on doing whatever it takes. You saw in the last film that he wasn't going to give up the Enterprise anymore. He wasn't going to you know, against the struggle with the Borg. He wasn't willing to sacrifice the things that mean so much to him to stop evil. He was going to do it in means that meant he didn't have to sacrifice, like, you know, the clothes on his back. He would find a way to do it in other means. And in this one, um, he's not like malicious in any way. It's just I can see his resolve. I can see his inner his inner determination and spirit, no matter what it takes. You know, shooting the like potentially risking his own life, shooting the exhaust vents in that final confrontation with a bad guy when he turns off his switches for something or the other, and you know the evil guy runs for his dear life. He's clinging on, and then like the fire erupts beneath them, and like Picard is, you know, hoping, of course, that Riker can swoop in the last second on the Enterprise and like rescue him. But if not, then you know that was his exit. But no, Riker swoops in, a la the Millennium Falcon. That's what it reminded me of. In the last second, rescues Picard, transported him out, and yeah. So like, you know, he saves the day. And the people can go back to their normal lives, and you know, hopefully they won't be disturbed and like forcibly removed or their lives changed because people want to selfishly obtain something that isn't naturally theirs. You know, there's moral messages there to be sort of you know, pondered. One thing that these Star Trek generation films get right, I would say, or do more so thoughtfully, in opposition to the original series films, is that each crew member, each character gets like more to do than the original series did. Where it was like Chekhov and whatnot, it was all about like, you know, Kirk and Spock, and the other characters felt like they were left out a little bit. But in these ones, although not all the characters, it's usually Picard is the main character, and then Data always gets a lot to do. But I feel like the other characters have worthwhile moments that like sort of like give credit to their appearance. Yeah, Data is one of my favorite characters. He's amazing. His humor, it all works for me. He's like, you know, he brings just, it's just wonderful to see Data and the actor just do his thing after all these. This is like, you know, over like what, like 10 years of being Data, and he just loves the role. And he's have you noticed he's changed it up slightly for the films? Like I think he's like, I don't know, his tone of voice or his body language has slightly changed a little bit for the films, which is cool. Again, the score is really, really wonderful. The score and the sound effects for all three of these films so far has been really, really, that's what you want to. That's what I want to hear. When I watch when this is the bar for films, the sound effects and whatnot. That's like the bar you want to achieve. The score really like sort of like serves the story well. Yeah, the cast dynamics between these casts that we've known for so many years, it's so well done. Excuse me. It's an intriguing plot, like the whole insurrection thing. Some Starfleet officers being like naughty people, going against their what they sign up for and what they say they're so righteous, but really they're not. Yeah, so like obviously there's Worf and Deanna are not like a thing anymore. It's more Deanna and Riker flirting again because Worf is, I think he's working on Deep Space Nine, but I've sort of like missed that chapter because I've gone from the Next Generation to the films. Is there any more? Yeah, there's like so there was a risk of like sometimes when like we there's a franchise or when there's a long serving IP, it's the risk of like using characters out of like their characteristics or like making a caricature out of them. So like Worf is now going through puberty in this film, so he's got like pimples and he's getting aggressive and stuff. So obviously Klingons have different ages where they do that. It's not so young for them, and obviously there's always a risk of like just ruining the character in an effort to, I don't know, bring like silly humor to it, but it worked. At first, I thought it was going to do that, but it worked in the end. It wasn't too obnoxious. It didn't take away from like Worf being who he is. It did a little bit, but like it still kind of worked. And Worf got some cool moments to do. Like it was a part of the story in a good way. Yeah, and have you not one final thing? Have you noticed that like because of the original series and the films, like to do explosions a lot, and like people in the crew and the Enterprise would be thrown around everywhere. And I've mentioned it before, but they'd love to do that, where like people would just go flying through things, and like parts of the set would just fall on people's heads and stuff. And the original Star Trek Next Generation, the series, didn't do that. But now in the films, the three films, they've done that quite a bit. They've like taken from the original series because it's like the films we have to do explosions and see an ensign go flying through the camera. So yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, so Deanna smoking hot. So is that Arjun, the new woman on that species of planet with the regenerative ability. She's smoking hot, and the costumes are all great. Riker's in like a leather jacket. Deanna looks wonderful, and yeah, really like this film. Thank you very much.